The endless stretch of blue. The rhythmic hum of the engine. The salty breeze. As the captain of a cruise ship that plies the waters of the Gulf of Mexico, I've spent more time on the water than I have on land. For years, the sea has been my constant companion, my escape, and my job. There's something magical about it. The vastness. The unpredictability. Each day brings a new horizon, new faces, and new destinations. But the one thing that never changes is the emptiness I feel when I leave the dock and head out into the unknown. I'm 39 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've been chasing adventure. I'm a man of the sea, a captain who leads tourists through the calm waters and stormy skies of the Gulf. The job is rewarding, no doubt about that. I've seen things most people only dream of, hidden coves, sun-kissed shores, and vibrant sunsets. But there's a price to pay for it. Long months away from home. Weeks without seeing my wife and kids. It's the price of adventure, and it's one I've learned to accept. Megan, my wife, she's the one who keeps the ship together when I'm gone. She's 34 now, a brilliant psychologist with a thriving practice in Galveston. She's always been the steady anchor in our lives, the one who keeps everything running smoothly when I'm out chasing the next wave. But lately, I've felt the distance growing between us. She's busy with her patients, and I'm busy with my passengers. We've both sacrificed so much for our careers, but somewhere along the way, I think we forgot to take care of each other. When I'm home, it's like I'm a ghost. I'm there, but I'm not really there. I'm tired from the trip, and she's exhausted from her work. The kids, Maddie, who's 7, and Jack, 4, they're always full of energy, but I can't help but notice the subtle changes. The little things, like the way Megan doesn't smile as much when I walk through the door, or how she's more distant when we sit together at the dinner table. I've tried to make it work. I really have. I've called home during my breaks, I've sent gifts, and I've even arranged special weekends. But no matter what I do, the tension lingers. It's like we're two ships passing in the night, never fully connecting. And no matter how hard I try to convince myself otherwise, I know it's only going to get harder. But I refuse to give up. Not yet. This year, for our 9th wedding anniversary, I decided to plan something special. Megan's always loved the beach. We've talked about going to Corpus Christi for years, but life always seemed to get in the way. So, this time, I took the initiative. I booked a private villa, one that faces the ocean, the kind of place where we could relax, recharge, and hopefully reconnect. I wasn't just planning a getaway, I was planning to fix what had started to fall apart between us. The drive to Corpus Christi was quiet. Too quiet. I could feel the tension between us even as we sat in the car, the kids in the back seat, half asleep from the long ride. Megan kept looking out the window, lost in thought. The silence wasn't the comfortable kind. It was the kind that said so much without a single word being spoken. When we arrived at the villa, the sun was just beginning to set, casting a warm orange glow across the water. The villa was perfect, everything I had hoped for. But when Megan stepped inside, she didn't seem to share the same excitement. She stood there for a moment, taking in the view, but her expression was distant. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. I could feel the knot in my stomach tighten. I had hoped that this trip would be different, that maybe we could put everything behind us and rediscover what we once had. But as I watched Megan, I had a sinking feeling that something was wrong. Deep down, I couldn't shake the thought that this vacation might not fix what was broken between us. It might be too late for that. We had dinner that evening, but it wasn't like our usual family meals. Megan barely spoke, and when she did, her words felt hollow. She kept glancing at her phone, checking the screen, and I couldn't help but wonder what was so important that it had her attention more than the family sitting right in front of her. By the time the kids were in bed, the weight of the silence was unbearable. I had hoped that after dinner, Megan and I could talk, maybe even reconnect, but I could see the walls she'd built up around herself. I couldn't blame her. After all, I had been gone so much, leaving her to juggle everything on her own. It was then that she said something that would change everything. "Charlie," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "I need to talk to you." I looked at her, my heart pounding. The way she said it, there was something in her eyes, a look of uncertainty, of hesitation. It was a look I hadn't seen in years. "I want to spend the night with Greg," she said softly. For a moment, the world stopped spinning. My mind struggled to process what she had just said. Greg? Her colleague? The therapist from her clinic? It didn't make sense. I knew Greg. He was a professional, someone Megan trusted deeply, but this wasn't something I ever expected to hear. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. I felt numb, like I was trapped in a nightmare. The air between us grew heavy, thick with unsaid things, and I couldn't breathe. The silence between us stretched out, unbearable. Megan's eyes were filled with something I couldn't quite place, guilt, sadness, maybe even a hint of fear. I could hear the faint sound of the waves crashing against the shore outside, but all I could focus on was the pounding of my heart in my chest. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what she had just said. "I need to be honest with you, Charlie," she continued, her voice shaking slightly. "It's not about you, it's about me. I've been feeling so alone lately. And Greg, he's been there for me. He listens. He understands me in ways I don't think you do anymore." Her words stung. It was like she had just thrown a bucket of cold water in my face. I could feel the blood drain from my face as I processed what she was saying. She wasn't just talking about needing space or needing time apart. She was talking about him. Greg. Someone who wasn't me. "I don't understand," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "Megan, we've been together for years. I've given everything to this family. I've worked so hard to provide, to make sure we have everything we need. What's missing?" Megan looked down, her fingers trembling slightly as she picked at the fabric of her dress. She avoided my gaze, like she was ashamed. "It's not about what you've given, Charlie. It's about what's been missing. I felt neglected. Like I've been invisible, and Greg, he noticed me. He sees me. I'm sorry, I never wanted to hurt you." The words hung in the air, a painful truth I wasn't ready to face. How had I let it get this far? I had spent so much of my time on the water, chasing the next adventure, the next cruise, and now it felt like everything was crumbling around me. My wife, the woman I had promised to love and cherish, was slipping away, and I hadn't even seen it coming. "I don't know what you expect me to say," I muttered, feeling the anger rising inside me. "You want me to just accept this? You want me to be okay with you spending the night with him?" Megan's face crumpled, and she began to cry. "Charlie, I never meant for any of this to happen. I don't know what else to do. I'm lost. I need to figure out what I want. I thought maybe being with Greg tonight, talking to him, would help me understand." I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the wooden floor. I couldn't sit there any longer. "I can't do this," I said through gritted teeth, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. "I can't just sit here and listen to you talk about him like this." Megan's sobs grew louder, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. I was too hurt, too angry, too betrayed. I stormed out of the room, unable to stay in the villa any longer. The night air hit me like a slap as I stepped out onto the porch. I paced back and forth, the sound of my footsteps lost in the crashing waves below. My mind spun with 1,000 thoughts, none of them making sense. I had never felt more alone. But then, I couldn't stop myself. I went back inside, to the table where Megan's phone had been left carelessly behind, her screen still glowing faintly in the dark. I knew I shouldn't look. I knew it would hurt more, but I couldn't help it. I picked up her phone and unlocked it. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through her messages. What I found was enough to shatter everything. There were texts between Megan and Greg, dozens of them. Messages filled with words I couldn't even stomach. "I miss you," one said. "Can't wait to see you again," another. The messages were laced with the kind of intimacy I hadn't felt from her in months. There were even pictures, images I could never unsee. Megan, smiling, her arms wrapped around Greg. The betrayal was clear, the depth of it suffocating. I dropped the phone, my chest tightening with rage. It was like the ground had fallen out from under me. Everything I had known, everything I had built, was a lie. I didn't know how long I stood there, staring at the phone, unable to breathe. It felt like hours. But eventually, my emotions broke free. I was angry, yes, but I was also heartbroken. Megan had chosen this, chose him, over me. Over our family. I couldn't stay there. Not another minute. When I went back into the bedroom, Megan was still crying. I didn't know what to say. My mind was a whirlwind of rage and disbelief. She looked at me with tear-streaked cheeks, pleading for my understanding, for my forgiveness. But all I could feel was the cold, sharp sting of betrayal. "I can't do this anymore, Megan," I said, my voice flat. "I can't keep pretending everything is fine when it's not. You're not the woman I married. And I'm not the man you need." Megan reached out for me, but I stepped back, the space between us now too wide to bridge. "I want you to leave," I said, the words harder than I expected. She froze, the shock evident in her eyes. "Charlie, please don't say that. I'm sorry, No," I interrupted. "I want you to leave. Tonight." I saw the pain in her face, but I didn't care. I couldn't bear the thought of her staying, of pretending like everything was okay. My heart was shattered, and nothing she said could fix it. Megan stood there for a long moment, crying silently. But eventually, she nodded, wiped her tears, and grabbed her things. I stayed in the room, unable to move, unable to think straight. My world had been torn apart, and all I could do was watch as everything I had known crumbled away. The next few days were a blur. The villa, which had once promised a chance to reconnect, now felt like a suffocating prison. Megan left that night, her tearful goodbye still echoing in my mind. The kids didn't understand why she was gone, and it hurt every time they asked about her. I had to hold back the truth. I couldn't tell them what had happened. Not yet. They were too young to understand betrayal. Too young to know why their mother wasn't there anymore. I threw myself into my work, keeping busy with the ship's duties, trying to bury the pain deep inside. But there were moments, small ones, when the weight of everything hit me. The quiet in the house when I returned after a long shift. The empty spaces where Megan's things used to be. The kids would ask me where she was, and I would just smile and tell them she was taking a little break. It was a lie, but it was the only one I could manage. Megan called a few times, but I didn't pick up. I didn't want to hear her apologies, her explanations. It was too much, too soon. I couldn't even look at her without feeling that knot of anger and hurt in my chest. How could she do this? How could she betray everything we had? I knew I had to do something about it, but I wasn't sure what. The pain was raw, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that the hardest part wasn't what Megan had done. It was what I had allowed to happen. I had been so focused on my work, on being the provider, the captain of the ship, that I had lost sight of the most important part of my life, my family. But it was too late now. The damage was done. A few days later, Megan called again. This time, I answered. "Charlie, please," she begged, her voice barely audible. "I know I've hurt you. I know I've made mistakes. But please, I need to see you. I need to talk to you." I felt a wave of frustration wash over me. "What more is there to say, Megan?" I asked, my voice flat. "You've already said everything I need to hear. Please, just let me explain," she said, her voice trembling. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of her words. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to understand. What was there to explain? She had made her choice. But as much as I tried to block it out, a part of me wanted to understand. Wanted to know why. Why Greg? Why did she need him? Why did she turn to him instead of me? "Fine," I finally said, my voice barely a whisper. "Come over. We'll talk." I didn't know what I expected from that conversation. I didn't know if I was hoping for closure, or if I just wanted her to say something that would make the pain go away. But nothing she said in that moment could fix what had been broken. When she arrived, she looked the same, yet so different. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying, and she had the look of someone who had lost everything, just like me. She sat across from me, and for a long while, neither of us spoke. "I've made a terrible mistake," she said finally, her voice cracking. "I know I've hurt you, Charlie. I never wanted this to happen. I was just so lost. I felt invisible. You were gone all the time, and Greg was there. He was there for me when I needed someone." "That doesn't excuse what you did," I replied coldly. "You don't just go to someone else when things get tough. You talk. You communicate. You don't betray your family." "I know," she whispered. "And I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I just didn't know what else to do. Greg made me feel seen. I didn't feel that from you anymore." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her how much I had given, how hard I had worked to provide for this family, how much I had sacrificed. But instead, I sat there in silence, staring at the floor, trying to keep my emotions in check. After a few moments, I looked up at her. "I can't do this anymore, Megan. I can't pretend everything's okay. I can't keep living in this lie." Her face crumpled again, and tears began to fall. "Charlie, please don't leave me. Please. I'll do anything. I'll change. I'll fix this. Just don't walk away." But I was already walking away. I didn't know where this journey would take me, but I knew it couldn't include her anymore. She had made her choice, and I had to make mine. I loved Megan. I always would. But the trust was gone. The foundation of our marriage was shattered, and there was no putting it back together. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "But I can't do this with you anymore. It's over." The finality of the words hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Megan sobbed, but I couldn't find it in myself to comfort her. I had nothing left to give. Later that week, I filed for divorce. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. Megan wanted to fight for custody of the kids, but I couldn't see how she could care for them after everything that had happened. I knew I had to protect them. I had to be their rock, their anchor in this storm. In the days that followed, the weight of the decision settled on me. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just empty. There was no anger that could fix this, no shouting that could erase the past. There was only acceptance. The life I had known, the family I had worked so hard to build, was gone. The days after the divorce were a blur. Everything felt like a fog. I spent the first few weeks trying to get used to the silence, the empty spaces in our house where Megan's laughter used to echo. Maddie and Jack were confused, but they were resilient. They were so young, and while I tried to shield them from the harsh reality of what had happened, they still sensed the shift in our lives. I could see it in their eyes, the way they asked, "Where's Mommy?" and "When's she coming back?" Each time they asked, it felt like a punch to the gut. But I learned to keep it together for them. I had to. As much as it hurt, I couldn't let them see the wreckage of what had once been our family. Megan fought for the kids. She fought hard. But the court ruled in my favor, granting me full custody. I didn't relish it. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt exhausted. I loved my children with every ounce of my being, but now I had to be both the mother and the father. It wasn't easy, and there were times when I would look at Maddie and Jack and wonder if they knew how much I was struggling to be enough for them. To be everything they needed. But slowly, over time, I began to adjust. I threw myself into work, pouring all my energy into my job as a captain. The sea had always been a place of solace for me, a place where I could escape the chaos of the world. But now, it felt like a lifeline. It was the only place where I could find peace, even if it was just for a few days at a time. I spent long hours on the ship, but the work was cathartic. The endless horizon, the rhythmic waves, the hum of the engine, it helped me find some sense of balance again. I threw myself into the routine, focusing on my passengers, making sure their trips were perfect, keeping my mind occupied with the task at hand. But at night, when the ship was anchored, and the passengers were asleep, I would stand on the deck, staring out at the ocean. I would think about everything I had lost, Megan, the life we had, the dreams we had shared. But I would also think about what I still had, Maddie and Jack. My children. My reason to keep going. The hardest part was learning to be alone. At first, I couldn't stand it. The quiet, the loneliness. But eventually, I started to embrace it. I realized that I didn't need anyone else to make me feel whole. I didn't need Megan. I didn't need anyone. What I needed was to rebuild myself, to find peace within myself, and to be the father my children deserved. There were moments when I would look at the kids, when they laughed or hugged me after a long day, and I would feel a flicker of hope. Maybe this wasn't the end of everything. Maybe it was just the beginning of something new. A chance to create a life for us, a life that was ours and no one else's. A life where the past couldn't follow us, where the ghosts of betrayal and hurt couldn't reach us. As the months passed, I began to see the world in a different light. I learned to appreciate the small things, the sound of Maddie's giggle, Jack's boundless energy, the way they both fell asleep in my arms at night. I learned that these moments, these fleeting seconds, were the things that truly mattered. One evening, after a long day on the ship, I found myself standing on the deck again, the wind tugging at my jacket as the sun dipped below the horizon. It was a beautiful sight. The sky was painted in hues of pink and orange, the water glittering beneath the fading light. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel the weight of the past pressing down on me. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. I wasn't sure what the future held. But for the first time, I didn't need to know. I had my children, my work, and a life that was slowly beginning to feel like mine again. Maybe that was enough. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't have everything figured out. But I was learning. And that was the most important thing. The storm had passed. And while I didn't know what lay ahead, I knew one thing for certain: I wasn't alone anymore. I had me. And I had them. And for now, that was enough.